Greetings, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Your presence here means a lot, and if you find this content worthwhile, subscribing to the channel would truly be appreciated. With that said, let's get started. I'm Spencer. Life has a strange way of revealing the truth, often through the most unexpected events. What seemed like a harmless company celebration ended up exposing a devastating truth that would unravel my marriage. The man who tried to publicly belittle me that evening had no idea that his own deceit and my wife's would soon come into full view. Rose and I had been together for several years when this all came to a head. Ours was a partnership built on honest dialogue and a shared respect for each other's goals. Long before we exchanged vows, we mutually decided to delay parenthood. Rose was passionately driven to establish herself professionally, and I admired her commitment. In our relationship, I was always the more introverted one, comfortable with quiet evenings at home, while Rose thrived in the bustle of social environments. As a senior marketing executive at a prominent city firm, she was regularly involved in professional functions, cocktail hours, client dinners, networking events. Her career was flourishing, and she embraced that success with pride. She often asked me to join her at these gatherings, company-wide retreats, annual holiday parties, formal dinners with executives, but I typically declined with a gracious excuse. Those environments just didn't suit me. I preferred cheering her on from the sidelines rather than mingling with unfamiliar faces. This contrast in our personalities was an unspoken but persistent difference. Rose would talk excitedly about upcoming events, occasionally nudging me to come along while I gently opted out. To her credit, she rarely pushed too hard. But something changed when her company's end-of-year celebration approached. This wasn't just another obligatory gathering, it held real significance. Rose had recently led a high-profile campaign, and her manager hinted that she'd be honored for it during the event. This time, she asked me to attend with a level of urgency she hadn't expressed before. She made it clear. Being there beside her during this recognition would mean everything. She had poured countless hours into the campaign, late nights, missed weekends, even bringing her work home. This wasn't merely professional praise, it was a milestone in her journey. With that in mind, I set aside my usual reservations. I agreed to go, not out of guilt, but because I genuinely wanted to show up for her on a night that clearly held weight. Rose took great care in getting ready for the evening, choosing a striking outfit, having her hair done, and preparing herself with precision. I made my own effort, digging out a suit I hadn't worn in years and making sure I looked the part. When the night arrived, we made our way to the upscale hotel venue where the celebration was being held. The atmosphere was vibrant and refined, exactly the kind of high-profile setting her company was known for. Rose was stunning, graceful, confident, and every bit the accomplished professional. I felt honored to be by her side. Throughout the evening, I stepped out of my shell more than usual. She introduced me to her co-workers, and I did my best to hold polite conversations with the guests around us. Despite being far from my comfort zone, I focused on being a supportive partner, determined to help make the night memorable for her. When the awards portion began, it was heartfelt and dignified. Rose was acknowledged for her dedication, and I was truly glad I'd chosen to attend. Seeing her hard work recognized made the effort to be there feel worthwhile. However, as the evening continued, a sense of discomfort crept in. One particular man, clearly a colleague, seemed to hover too close for comfort. He routinely inserted himself into our conversations, lingering with an unusual intensity. At first, I chalked it up to normal party behavior, people moving between groups, making casual small talk. But his presence became increasingly deliberate. His comments, while disguised as jokes, carried an edge. They were designed to unsettle me, all while maintaining just enough charm to avoid open criticism. What troubled me more was Rose's reaction. She laughed at his remarks as if they were harmless fun. He continued with subtle digs, testing boundaries and undermining me in a way that felt far too intentional. It wasn't blatant confrontation. but the undertone was unmistakable. Others around us began to notice as well. Some of Rose's co-workers exchanged awkward glances or quietly distanced themselves during his more pointed remarks. His intent was clear, to provoke me. But I refused to play into it. I stayed composed, determined not to let his behavior derail the evening. What surprised me, though, was Rose's silence. She neither challenged him during the event nor mentioned anything afterward. I kept my thoughts to myself, believing that losing my temper would only hand him the victory he was seeking. But once we got home, the encounter weighed heavily on me. His remarks weren't just random, they felt personal, almost intimate. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that there was something deeper at play. The familiarity in his words, the knowing way he addressed me, it was too specific to be coincidence. Combined with Rose's strange non-reaction, I began to suspect that this wasn't just workplace drama. I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was being deliberately kept from me. After days of wrestling with doubt, I made a decision that changed the course of everything. I contacted a private investigator to learn more about this man, who he really was, and what kind of connection he might have with Rose. It wasn't a choice I made lightly. It was a painful step, one that acknowledged a loss of trust. But the incident at the event had unsettled me too deeply to overlook. I needed clarity. Over the following weeks, the investigation quietly unfolded in the background. Outwardly, nothing changed. I kept my usual routines and avoided confrontation. But inside, I was bracing for the truth I feared was coming. The investigator handled the assignment with a level of accuracy and discretion that immediately inspired confidence. He thoroughly examined the background of my wife's colleague, his rapport with Rose, and searched for any indications of inappropriate behavior. When he finally presented his findings to me, the reality was far more devastating than I had imagined. The man was, in fact, romantically involved with my wife. How the investigator managed to uncover such extensive details remains a mystery to me. Still, the evidence painted a clear and irrefutable picture. The affair had been ongoing for quite some time. He had unearthed proof stretching back several months, meeting logs, photos, messages, evidence that confirmed without question the depth of their involvement. What stood out most was how thorough and undeniable it all was. All the while, Rose continued acting at home like nothing was amiss, maintaining the facade of a loyal spouse. Her colleague's strange behavior at that company event now took on an entirely new meaning. Looking back, his actions at the party seemed calculated, designed to provoke me. It felt as though his animosity stemmed from the fact that I stood in the way of what he truly wanted. The report included personal details about him as well. He was married to a woman named Amy, and they had been together for years. That revelation added another layer of betrayal. He hadn't only been sabotaging my marriage, but betraying his own wife too. With this knowledge in hand, I felt a strong moral obligation to let Amy know what had been happening behind her back. Just as I deserved the truth, so did she. I found her profile on Facebook and sent over the materials the investigator had gathered, along with a brief explanation of how I had come to uncover the affair. A few days passed before Amy replied, but when she did, her message was filled with raw pain and disbelief. After reviewing the evidence, she and I began exchanging messages. She was trying to come to terms with what had happened. During our conversations, she revealed that she was likely going to leave her husband. The betrayal had cut too deeply, and the trust she once had in him had been shattered. I made sure not to influence her decision. It was important that she come to terms with it on her own. While I was speaking with Amy, I was also dealing with the impossible task of deciding what to do about my own situation. The proof against Rose was overwhelming. But confronting her meant facing the fact that our relationship was already broken. For days, I searched for the right moment and the right words. Eventually, I chose directness. I confronted Rose and laid everything on the table: the evidence, the photos, the timeline. I asked her to tell me the truth about her involvement with her colleague. Her reaction confirmed everything. The shock on her face told me she had never expected her secret life to be exposed so completely. She was caught off guard, clearly unprepared for the depth of the investigation. With no room left to lie, she immediately began begging me to reconsider. She swore the affair had ended and promised to sever all ties with the man. She insisted that she loved me, that she wanted to fix what had been broken, and that any recent contact between them was his doing, not hers. She called it a terrible mistake, one she claimed she regretted. But there was no salvaging what had already been lost. The affair had lasted too long, involved too many deliberate lies, and was even known to people she worked with. This wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a carefully maintained deception. I told her clearly and calmly that our marriage was over and that I would be filing for divorce. The foundation of trust that had once supported our relationship had collapsed, and I couldn't imagine rebuilding it. Shortly after that conversation, we each retained lawyers and initiated the divorce proceedings. The emotional toll was immense, but the legal process itself was relatively uncomplicated. There were no children involved, and our finances had largely remained separate throughout our marriage. Only a few shared items needed to be divided. After several months, the divorce was finalized. Rose's strong financial position and career meant there was no need for alimony or settlements. We split our assets and moved forward, independently. However, the consequences of what happened didn't end with our divorce. Word of the affair spread through Rose's workplace, and the fallout was immediate. Her colleague's marriage to Amy also came to an end. The affair, once hidden in secrecy, had become an open scandal. Instead of continuing their relationship, Rose and the man she had been involved with both faced serious personal and professional repercussions. The very man who had attempted to undermine me at that party had, in the end, ruined his own life. What he meant as an insult had, ironically, led to the exposure of everything. His behavior at that event was the catalyst that started this entire unraveling. Without his obvious hostility, I may never have been suspicious. Rose had concealed the truth well. It was his aggression that pushed me to look deeper. That experience taught me something critical. People who lash out often reveal more about themselves than they intend. His anger wasn't about me. It was about guilt, about resentment, about the mess he had helped create. It also reinforced something I've come to believe deeply: the importance of trusting your intuition. From the moment he targeted me at the party, I knew something was off. That feeling turned out to be right. His actions weren't random. They were driven by his involvement in the affair. The investigation didn't just expose their relationship. It laid bare the extent of the lies. Rose had led a parallel life, presenting herself as a loving partner while maintaining a hidden connection with another man. The level of deception was chilling. Facing the truth forced me to see a side of Rose I hadn't fully recognized before. Her ability to act as though nothing was wrong, all while betraying our vows, revealed a disturbing capacity for compartmentalization and manipulation. Once everything came to light, the affair between her and her co-worker quickly disintegrated. The secrecy and thrill that had likely sustained it couldn't survive the glare of exposure, the pain of broken families, and the judgment of peers. Amy chose not to look back. Her decision was firm. She saw no way to rebuild trust, and she didn't try. I admired her strength. Her clarity in the face of betrayal left a lasting impression. Meanwhile, the repercussions continued to ripple through Rose's workplace. Workplace romances, especially secretive ones, often leave wreckage in their wake, and this situation was no exception. Their colleagues knew the truth now, and it changed everything: the way they were viewed, the way they were treated, and the dynamic in their professional lives. As for me, though the collapse of my marriage was excruciating, I came to see it as a kind of liberation. Living with someone who could sustain such an elaborate deception for so long would have inevitably worn me down emotionally. As devastating as the truth was to learn, it provided the perspective I needed to determine my next steps. My tendency to remain composed and quiet, especially in high-pressure social environments, proved to be an asset when everything eventually surfaced. When I chose not to react to a coworker's provocative behavior at the gathering, I sidestepped needless drama and avoided humiliating myself. Meanwhile, his conduct laid bare his own character flaws. Though hiring a private investigator came at a steep price, the outcome made every dollar worthwhile. Once I had irrefutable evidence of the affair, the divorce proceedings advanced smoothly, offering Rose little opportunity to deny or minimize what she had done. That same documentation also gave Amy a full and undeniable account of the deception her husband had kept hidden. Because Amy earned considerably less than her husband, the court awarded her a much more favorable settlement. Had the colleague who tried to goad me that evening understood that his actions would unravel his own relationship and expose the double life he was leading, he might have acted differently. His effort to discredit me not only failed, it backfired, revealing truths that led to the collapse of his own marriage in the process. Now, I'm turning my energy toward rebuilding, anchored in a deeper appreciation for how vital honesty and trust are in any partnership. This entire ordeal heightened my instincts and reaffirmed the importance of listening to that inner voice when something doesn't feel right, and taking steps accordingly. Strangely enough, the event that was meant to celebrate Rose's success became the catalyst for both our marriages to fall apart. Life has a curious way of pulling the truth into the light, often when it's least expected. Those who believe they can manipulate others without consequence often end up unmasking themselves. And with that, this story comes to an end. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you found this narrative compelling, don't forget to check out the other videos on this channel. Until next time,